Today I'll be reading Chapter 10 of Ripper, starting on page 43. Chapter 10. The hunched man nodded at a spot behind Carver. You were doing something before you were interrupted. Go back to it. Carver didn't understand. Excuse me, sir? Hawking bristled. Your letter to Roosevelt said you wanted to be a detective, didn't it? Yes, sir. But how did you... No, he said, snapping his head back and forth. An answer to one question will lead to another, and we'll be standing here all night. If you want to be a detective, go back to what you were doing, detect. He waved his cane at the quarter of brass pipes, marking the dark patch of concrete. What were you looking at? Confused, Carver answered. Just that the concrete was different, like something was sealed in, sir. In 1873, to be precise. Look again. Tell me more. Don't call me sir every 2 seconds. I despise repetition. Carver stared at the tubes. The tubes don't belong? Hawking crinkled his lips. Irritation emanated from his form in waves. Of course they belong. Everything belongs. You just don't know what the devil they belong to. How might you find out? Carver had barely spoke, but already felt he was doing everything wrong. It was like talking to Delia, only worse. Ask. Ask who? You. Someone at Devlin's. Devlin's is closed, and I'm not going to tell you. It was another test, like the writing on the card. Carver concentrated, but nothing came to him. Hawking steelily gazed hard at work, sizing up his new pupil. Carver wondered if he could read his mind from the way he stood, or tell what he'd had for breakfast, the way Sherlock Holmes might. This isn't a done deal, boy. Give me less than your best, and I'll send you straight back to Ellis. Stop wasting time. Use the skills that you got here. Feeling more intimidated than he ever had in Finn's presence, Carver knelt beside the nearest tube. It was a tube, just a brass tube. What else could it be? He poked his hand into the opening. A few inches inside, his finger felt a metallic mesh, a filter. Maybe it was connected to something below. Was it part of the store's basement? Hawking leaned against the building, looking relieved at no longer having to support the burden of his body. There was an odd door behind him. It fit the store's design, but seemed newer, different, like the concrete. It didn't have any doorknob or keyhole. A gilded metal frame curled intricately over its glass center. The glass was smoky. Whatever beyond it was dark. The older man tapped the whitish hair at his temple. Don't just think. Give yourself something to think about. The brain's like a rat spinning on a wheel in a cage, trapped, and it doesn't even know it. All it knows is what the senses tell it. Use them. Carver was nervous, feeling stupid, but determined not to give up. He wrapped his hands around the tube. It was thick, polished clean. In intervals, decorative rings bulged neatly from the surface. It's expensive, he announced. Well, that's something at least. What might it be for? If it was a water drain, it was upside down. Carver put his ear against the opening, but couldn't hear anything because of the surrounding noise. A chilly wind whistled along Broadway. Horses' cloth wheels rolled on the cobblestone, covering his exposed ear. He concentrated, managing to hear and feel a steady, almost mechanical movement of warmer air. It's a vent, Carver blurted. Congratulations, you're not a complete moron, Hawking announced. And now how do you figure out what's down there? The small victory rallied Carver. A New York detective library story with Nick Neverseen came to mind. Nick was no Holmes, but while trying to find some kidnappers hiding in a mine, he'd found the mine's air shaft and... Plug up the air hole, Carver said. Whoever's down there would have to come up. Hawking's laugh surprised him. It was different from his cackle, sharp and resonant. I like that, the detective said, but whoever's down there wouldn't appreciate it. Didn't think to try to pull or move it, did you? Well, why would you? The thing's set in solid concrete. Put your hand around it again, and this time twist to the right. Carver gave Hawking a puzzled look and then did as he was told. The section above the top ring pivoted easily. It moved a quarter turn, then clicked into place. Reading his expression, Hawkins said, "If that little bit of nonsense impresses you so much, you won't last the night. Push down, twist left, pull up, and twist right. Go on." Carver moved the tube in sequence, having no idea what to expect. He remembered another story in which Alan Quatermain entered an ancient temple by pressing stones in sequence, but this was in the middle of the street in New York City, a city Carver thought he knew well. After the final twist, a series of small metallic sounds echoed from the tube. Carver rose and stepped back, half expecting the sidewalk to grind open, and instead there was a final tiny click, not from the tube, but from the ornate door behind Hawking. It had propped open. Carver grinned like a 7-year-old. A combination lock? Yes, the designer is fond of gadgets. Can't stand them myself. He put his hand on the edge of the door. Shall we go in? Hawking hobbled in about 2 feet, then turned to face the street. Carver thought he was waiting for him, but as he approached saw there was no place else for Hawking to go. The room was 5 feet square at best, barely enough feet for 4 standing adults. There were no other rooms. All 3 walls were covered with metallic designs similar to those on the door. Once Carver was beyond the door frame, Hawking grabbed a small handle and pulled the door shut. There was an oily machine smell, and the small room filled with a sound not unlike what followed the last click of the tube, the soft, steady whir of hidden gears. Stranger still, the wind hadn't stopped. Only now the breeze ran not from left to right, but from the ceiling to the floor. Carver looked around and cramped space in the wonder. Hawking shrugged. "Haven't you ever been in an elevator?" If you want to hear Chapter 11 of Ripper, look for my next video.